Malcolm-Jamal Warner, a.k.a. Theo Huxtable, has passed away.
Listen, man.
That's the craziest.
That's what I woke up to yesterday. Like, I got to sleep in on a Monday, and a rare Monday, and my phone had been blowing up, and I had not seen it till like 1 p.m.
I was at work, and somebody says, one of my coworkers says, Theo Huxtable just died. I said, what?
Man, he hasn't been on the air in a long time.
And I'm like,
I watch the Cosby Show literally every day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Malcolm-Jamal Warner. She was like, yeah, go look. And I looked online. I said,
yeah, I thought the dude told me at work too. I thought he was bullshitting because his link said TMZ.TV. I'm like, man, that ain't real, man. Get out of here.
And what's crazy about him is child actor, obviously, a part of all of our childhoods. You can make a case for this being the coldest sitcom ever made. I stand on it. And he was a musician as well. Like, had started his own group, and you know, he was out there performing, and he had just started a podcast with Keisha Knight Pulliam. They had talked about some stuff on a couple episodes.
Was she on the show with him, or was she just a guest?
It might have been a guest. It might have been a guest.
Yeah.
Might have been a guest.
I think it might have been him and his wife, maybe.
Fair enough. Yeah, I stand corrected if that's true. But man, that's tough, man. Like, everybody knows Gordon Gartrell. Everybody knows Miss Westlake. Everybody knows Justine. You know, like, these are our timeless moments from our childhood. And as we get older, we start to see people leave that we grew up on, and it just shows you that, you know, it's cliche, but Father Time is undefeated, 100%.
Yeah,
and
cultural icon.
Come on.
Crazy how people may not realize how big of a deal the Cosby Show was.
Facts.
You know, but this is a show that pulled about a 35 share in the ratings every Thursday. I think it was like 5 years where it was the #1 show on television. It always won its time slot. And
By far, though.
Oh, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, it was by far.
Like there was 1 year, I believe the World Series was broadcast on NBC, and they were like, yeah, World Series is important, but we still got to get this episode of The Cosby Show on. So that's the cultural impact of that show. Specifically, Theo, I mean, like, you know, of course you say, you know, because, you know, I've talked about this before of how television is something that we relate to, and we see the joy that comes through those characters, and we try to, you know, relate that joy to whatever it is that we're going on in our lives. And sometimes the lack of joy, that's really part of the image problem of black people on television for a lot of years up until the Cosby Show. And, you know, Theo was just a character, even though his character was older than me, that I related to. This is the wild thing about the Cosby Show, is how many people, when I got to college, who the Cosby Show to them was like, you might as well watch the Star Wars. Because I remember talking to people and say that just wasn't real. Yeah. You know, but if you are from the south side of Chicago, or maybe it was rough and, you know, father was not in the home or whatever, and, you know, you certainly didn't have an upstairs and a downstairs and a father who had multiple sweaters. Facts. You know, I could see where that would come from, but at the same time, that was a lot closer to my reality than Good Times, if you will. They were cartoonishly poor to me. Like, I understand there are people who related more to Good Times than they did the Cosby Show, but 100%. I also think that was the problem.
Yeah. Back then, the middle class actually existed, so you could have had a balance of both, or knew somebody on both sides of things. And I think that what the Cosby Show actually did for people our age and younger and older, because I mean, my daughter watches Cosby Show now.
That's dope. That's dope.
It was the introduction to this can be you.
Right.
And then it, you know what I'm saying, kind of encouraging people, if they wanted to go to college, with the follow-up of
Different World.
You know what I'm saying? It was a culturally rich time period that was inspiring a lot of young people coming up. And it's something that kind of stuck with a lot of us to this day. That's why I think it's affecting a lot of people, like they lost somebody they know. Because technically you did, in a sense, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Theo was somebody that we grew up with. 100%.
Absolutely.
Just off the popularity of the show, the magnitude of the show, I feel like Theo is just one of the homies. Like, we just grew up watching him.
And what, you know, even though this was a show about this, not just middle class, but upper middle class black family, is that Theo wasn't a perfect character.
Right.
You know, one of the things that, like, you know, of course I dig way too deep into these things, as you all know. Oh, yeah. Is that I, you know, actually have a theory about the Cosby Show. was actually about Theo. Like,
I remember you saying that.
The very first episode, it was like, when Dr. Huxtable said, he said, well, I just want to be regular people.
Yeah.
And he basically said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You're going to try. Yeah. I brought you in this world. I'll take you out. Mm-hmm. And the final episode is Theo graduating from college.
Facts.
So if you watch every season of the show, there's one very Theo-centered episode, if not more than one, about trying to raise a black man in America.
And all of those episodes were, to your point, which actually has always made me think about your theory, is the Theo episodes usually, if not always, were heavy. There's always something serious going on when they featured him. There's something that he had to deal with, overcome. He always has to come back to Cliff and talk about, like, when just
struggling with dyslexia.
There we go.
That was a big
what I'm
one
talking about.
For
yeah,
me,
stuff
because
like
especially like there was a point where I had been diagnosed with a learning disability that I didn't find out about until late. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of times they catch them when they're young, but mine didn't have to do with. A lot of times, a lot of people are misdiagnosed. That's why I don't really like to talk about that. But I figure, why not? Because that's what we do here.
For sure.
Is because they just say, oh, you're putting all these kids on these drugs and it's messing with their minds. But part of the reason why I didn't get diagnosed until I was a junior in high school is because when you're not a behavior problem, like, they don't pick up on it. They just say, oh, well, he's not paying attention. Or he's not doing this. Or, he's engaging in class, but for whatever reason, it's just not translating to what goes on the paper.
That's right.
Or he has potential. We know he can do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's always that type of thing.
We don't have to sit him out in the hall.
Right.
Like
and so,
he's perfectly fine.
So much of teachers and attention, administrators, what have you, is focused on the discipline problems. And then I do think that is a problem. It's like, I'll just put them on some sort of pill and maybe it'll be quiet. But when you're already quiet and you're already, they're just thinking either you just don't get it or, potentially you're just lazy. Mm-hmm. And that was part of that dyslexia episode where there was a real thing where it was like, how do you not get this? And you as parents, not that you feel bad, but you just didn't know. Yeah. And I thought that was a very, up to that point, I had never seen anything like that on television.
Mm-hmm. You see, now I'm starting to see, and everybody's affected by that, grew up in our era or paid attention to the show. You see lists where they say, oh man, let's name the top 10 black sitcoms. Let's do this with the black sitcoms. And I'm thinking to myself, this is one of the coldest sitcoms, period. I don't put this on let's just compare the black shows. I'm talking about across the board. Yeah. This is one of the great illest shows ever to be made.
Yeah, unfortunately, it suffered the situation with Bill Cosby himself. It's one of those situations where, do you separate the person that was
from the artist?
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think it's one of those situations. And like I said, I literally, when I come home, if I'm watching anything, if I turn the TV on, it's the Cosby Show. Followed by Different World. I'm still watching the same I watched when I was a kid. Yeah. Right? That's why that one kind of gets a black eye because of that situation. And it's almost like you're punishing the other people on the show.
Which I think is unfair. Because I think that pulls from the greatness of that show because of one person. Now, granted, he's the person. I ain't about to lie. And, I'm not about to absolve him from anything that he did or, that was wrong. But to strip the credibility from all the rest of those people that were part of that great show.
And what it actually did culturally.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Our side, whatever happened with that situation.
Yeah.
It still culturally inspired people
to do better.
To do better as a whole. You know what I'm saying?
To do better, yeah.
So that's the reason why that particular show is not mentioned. If all of this stuff hadn't happened, there's no way that they would not mention it. Even when they talk about top TV dads, you never see Dr. Huxtable on any of those shirts.
But in real life, he's arguably that guy.
Yeah. Look, Dr. Huxtable and Bill Cosby are two different people.
Facts.
Yeah. I understand where people's issue is. I really do. I don't ever want to seem like I'm insensitive to that.
No, for sure.
And I understand, last year would have been the 40th anniversary of the Cosby Show. I understand why we didn't celebrate that.
Man, it would have been special.
That really should have been something, that they should have, NBC could have completely rallied behind that. Yeah. But, we can't. I just think that when you talk about Malcolm-Jamal Warner, of course we know him as Theo, but of course he's done other things. He was just recently on a show on Fox called The Resident.
The Resident was good.
Yeah. And, you know, he had done a show with Tracy Ellis Ross called Read Between the Lines. It was like the precursor to Blackish, if you will.
Yeah. They were married, weren't they? They were husband and wife? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Malcolm and Eddie.
Malcolm and Eddie.
But, you know, also just on the hip-hop tip, he directed a lot of hip-hop videos.
Talk to him.
He was in a Funky Beat video.
He was in the Funky Beat video. They were definitely playing De La Soul on the Cosby Show, and I'm pretty sure that was his influence. Had Special Ed on the show as JT Freeze, you know. You know, like I said, I directed Special Ed's videos, directed videos for New Edition.
Yep, sure.
He hosted Saturday Night Live with Run DMC as the guest.
Yes.
You know, that was a big deal. I remember that.
Yes.
You know, so he has a connection to hip hop. He has a connection to the culture. You know, 54, you know, he was on vacation with his family. That's just sad, but
that's
still.
the worst part, bro.
Rest in peace to Malcolm-Jamal Warner.
Prayers to his family, man.
His contribution can't be denied.
Absolutely. Yeah, he definitely left his mark. So, yeah.
Facts.